Hey, and welcome to this Security Partner Guidance video of myself, Richard Diver. I am the Senior Technical Business Development Manager, and I have the pleasure of talking to Mark Simos today. Mark, welcome.
Thanks. And my name is Mark Simos. I'm lead cybersecurity architect at Microsoft and produce reference architectures, best practices, and the like.
Excellent. So we're going to cover some really good content today. Mark, I know that when I was a consultant in the field, just how much your previous content, if people aren't aware of it yet, they're going to be, just how much of that content really had an impact on the way that I approached my customers' all-up security architecture. And I just reflect back on at least 5, maybe 10 years worth of diagrams and information coming out about how Microsoft is really approaching security. Back then it was still building and growing, but now it's such a complex range of capabilities. So we're going to go through what the MCRA is, the Microsoft Cyber Reference Architecture, and also the CAF, which is an acronym for the Cloud Adoption Framework, and specifically the work that Mark's been doing in security. So Mark, let's go through this first piece here, which is one of my new favorite diagrams that you've created. And Mark's been the creator and curator of a lot of this content. And so this is a behind the scenes view of a bunch of other videos you're going to see Mark release very soon. So we're just going to give you the partner's view of this instead. So Mark, walk us through what do you see when you were creating this, and how do you use this when you're having these conversations?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the interesting thing, we've been looking for a way to kind of express, specifically around zero trust, because, zero trust, just like digital transformation and the cloud transformation, it really touches everybody in the organization, all the way from the CEO down to practitioners, but it does so in a different way. And so we've been sort of struggling to find a language for it. And we finally found this sort of 4-layer diagram, like a 4-layer cake, that sort of stratifies and says, okay, at this business leadership, this is generally the kind of things that need to be done, technical leadership, et cetera. And so this really kind of helps us show a lot of the different documentation and guidance that we've been building over the years, how those relate to each other. So that first left part is, within the customer organization, what needs to happen. You start it with that securing digital transformation. This is obviously the security pillar. You then need to figure out how to integrate security in the business, which is the top half of the CAF there, the Cloud Adoption Framework. And then you need to develop a security strategy and the program components, and then the epics. What are the initiatives that you're driving as a security organization that then meet those business integration requirements, et cetera. And then that becomes the guidance for the architecture and policy that the sort of middle of the organization. And everybody likes to make fun of middle managers, right? It's I grew up in the 80s and 90s, but the truth is they do an extremely important job of translating strategy into real, concrete, meaningful plans. And so that's where architecture and policy and standards and all those kind of things come together and really get updated or created. And then that leads into the technical planning. Okay, great, we have this thing, we're going to do it. Let's go ahead and put some specific plans out there. And then, of course, implementing it, doing the actual work that aligns to all these things. And so getting a very complex top to bottom thing done like that is quite difficult. And so we're really working on filling all of that in. So organizations really understand, okay, I don't have to translate from something that's good for my boss or good for my team members. I can think about what's important to me and really kind of see how all those things fit together.
Yeah, great. And I think from a partner's perspective, I was a partner for the last 10 years, so I've kind of seen a few things from the smallest to the largest, and whether you're a consulting partner or you're managed service offerings, knowing the problem of the day and the possible solutions to solve for it. I think this helps from both a sales perspective. You could be a technical architect. You need to know where the current topic that you're talking to your customers about, how does that fit in the grander scheme? So understanding the different lens of what a CIO does versus a CISO, because really the CISO role only came out, a few years ago, started to become very popular. And as that starts to formulate into a more mature offering, they have their own separate set of guidance, which doesn't make sense to keep positioning the same strategies like they were before, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you mention your consulting background. I spent many years doing consulting for Microsoft, and you always need those different tools in your toolboxes, right? Because everything's changing at all these levels. but you got to be able to have the different flexibility. Like, tomorrow might be a meeting with the CIO, and then, you're working with a SOC analyst the week after that. And so you've got to be able to kind of have that flexibility we found, but still connected and aligned.
Yeah, and the same for career development, I'd say as well. I know I've came from the NT4 days, and Active Directory used to be the thing I used to worry about. And now today, if I look at the number of tools and technologies and industries and countries to think about in different problems, you need to be able to know how to, again, pivot and use the tools available the best way. So this is the MCRA overview. Last time you updated it was on April 2019. So a lot's changed since then. We won't go into detail on this one. There's an individual video for every piece of this that you'll be able to go and look at detail. But Mark, again, just like to get your opinion on pulling all this together and releasing this new release here in May 2021. What are your key points here?
Yeah, so what we were thinking on this one, it was sort of an epiphany, I think, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, as of the time of the recording, where, instead of just doing an updated cyber reference architecture of that first capabilities diagram, which is what many people are familiar with, there's a build slide versus a static, we had sort of created these derivatives like sisters or cousins of that to address all these other different sort of complex topics within security. And so, this gave us the ability to sort of bring all those together and show that there are many valid lenses on security. And, it's really interesting. Like, for example, I just found out recently that we had an organization that was having a hard time really kind of understanding and getting value from, Microsoft technologies and really their technology in their organization as a whole. And, that people diagram in the middle that sort of explained how roles and responsibilities are changing, led to a really productive 2-hour conversation with the CIO and CISO to talk about this. And okay, this is how things are changing. These are the roles that are probably going to do these things. This team would own these tools, and understand, we don't really have this function. Maybe we need to go and, find an outsourcer for that until we can build that muscle, build that skill. And so it really kind of gives you a lot of flexibility, but still within sort of like a reference structure. So we found there's a lot of power in putting that like default reference out there, because people can compare to it and say, this is what I'm doing today. This is what Microsoft has as a reference. And I may not be able to go exactly to that, but I can compare to it. Or if I'm building a brand new program, I know where to start, and I can say, I can't do all of these now, but I can do 80% of them. So yeah, that was really kind of the thinking of it. And we, covered all the main topics. The zero trust user access is a hot one, because that's the very first part of zero trust. On the second page, we talk zero trust is much more than just user access, right? The security operations is a very popular one. People get a lot out of that. We actually use that as our, some of our planning exercises for certification. Operational technology is a new one. We bought CyberX not too long ago. So we really wanted to embrace the language and the practices and the learnings of that OT space that, hey, you got 30 to 50-year-old machines, computers that are controlling 50 to 100-year-old physical machines, with those computers. So it's a very different world, and they've got the Purdue model and all that. The attack change coverage is very popular. People can see how we cover that end-to-end and that really simple, crisp, clear visual. The Azure piece with the complete end-to-end story, like everything from your internal users to their accounts to their workstations to their interfaces with Azure, whether it's command line or portal or API, into the resources themselves, all the way out to the devices and the customer apps. That full end-to-end view, and how do we array the controls around that? And of course, last one, multi-cloud and cross-platform. We do get a lot of people that think, oh, Microsoft, you're in security, so you just secure Azure and Office, right? Or Windows. And it's like, not really. We're a full security vendor. And so we had to basically explain that and show people visually, listen, we secure the stuff you've got, your Linux, your AWS, your GCP, your ancient OT stuff, the whole kit and caboodle.
Sorry, go ahead. No, it's excellent. I've been using that security operations one, I think, for the whole of last year to explain why Azure Sentinel matters, and the move to XDR approach. And again, it's another thing that, look at what's being said in the marketplace. Much of this advice that you're giving as well isn't just purely about Microsoft, right? So much of it is from, if we go into the next page, which is about zero trust, is the ability to take a market idea or an industry idea, something that's shifting in the landscape, and then showing how Microsoft tools and capabilities line up to that. Now, I know many partners have to deal with multiple products. Customers have multiple products in there, and you're not going to get 100% Microsoft. But what this allows you to do is take the reference architectures, exactly what they are, see how you would do it if it was 100% Microsoft, and now replace all the pieces where there's either a gap and they don't have anything. That's a nice, easy fill for a partner to do, versus they already have 3 or 4 products or solutions in this place doing something at some capability. And you can use that to go, okay, let's work with what you have and build upon it and pivot to where the customer's next problem is, the next risk, the next solution opportunity is.
Yep, and there's a couple of them. We haven't done this for all of them, but like, for example, security operations, we actually included, it's a hidden slide, but it's in the downloadable deck that is purely capabilities. There's not a single Microsoft thing other than the logo on it that that basically says this is the SIM, this is the XDR capabilities, and it's much more of a generic capabilities one. So we're starting to put those kind of things in there, and it's sort of like a as needed basis.
And I know you're part of a big part of the Zero Trust movement. So do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing here with Zero Trust and how that's really pushing the needle?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so Zero Trust, like I mentioned earlier, it's a transformation that changes strategy, changes tactics. Honestly, we kind of used a tactic as a strategy. When you talk about a security perimeter, that was one military tactic out of a whole set of military doctrine, right? And we tried to make a strategy out of it. It didn't quite work, right? And there's still places for it, and there's places where it makes sense to have a security perimeter, but it's not a strategy. And so with that, because they're changing so many things, including our mindset in security, we wanted to give a full kind of end-to-end view of Zero Trust. And so that's where that overview comes in. We put a little highlight in there because the rapid modernization plan has been very, very popular. It helps people understand what to do first, next, and later, which is probably the #1 question I get on Zero Trust in almost every situation is after you get through the what it is, be like, that's cool. What do I do first? Right? And so we wanted to kind of lay that out.
And I took a couple of quotes out of the documentation because I can tell some of Mark's creative writing in here. So I'll use a few of these and we can see if that aligns well. But one of them is things like shifting to the cloud for security is more than a simple technology change. It's a generational shift in technology.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you think about when we went from no computers, pure paper, to mainframes and the various generations of that, and then mainframes to, hey, we have these desktop mini computers on our desk, and then to that sort of enterprise servers, right, where you have a lot more flexibility for teams to stand up things, which, NT was really a key part of, Novell and some others back in the day. And then, we're now sort of at the end of that era. Now, of course, legacy always sticks with you until you finally get rid of it. So we're multi-generational, but cloud is another fundamental model. Now it's got a little bit of bounce back between, local computing, cloud, or central computing kind of thing. So it has that element to it, but it is fundamentally different than a mainframe. And it's genuinely a different generation. It's a whole new way of thinking. You have the shared responsibility model that you have to figure out instead of, I own everything, physical machine, power, ping, pipe, all the way up to the processing. Now I'm sharing that, and I'm on a shared sort of grid, like a power grid. And so it is fundamentally different.
So organizations are facing motivational human attackers who have financial incentive to successfully attack an organization. Now that, again, is a great quote I like, because that's different to just malware that happened to accidentally hit your environment, right? If you were unlucky enough to get a spray attack where it did land and expand inside of your environment, that's unfortunate. But this is very different, right? When we talk about human attackers and financial motivations, they're successful more and more in the news. So how does that change how we have to help customers modify their thinking around security?
Yeah, that's a topic we actually go into quite a bit in the CAF Secure videos on, if I recall correctly, risk insights is, I think, the section that we put that one in there, where we talk about the difference between sort of the criminals, right? Because you got some for-profit entities, the governments, which are kind of economic development, but also mission driven, and then the sort of hacktivists, right? And so we talk about sort of the different motivations. Then, of course, within there, you have the spectrum of, sort of I'm just going to, spray and pray and get as many as I can. But we're seeing now with the ransomware, they're seeing return on investment. If they go and they, hit the right organization, they spend a little time researching them, they can get multi-million-dollar payouts. And there's, of course, an affiliate model that enables it and all sorts of other craziness. So we're seeing this really rich ecosystem. And you really have to step up your game at the end of the day. To do security well now, I mean, you're facing really serious threats. And of course, you've got 30 years of technical debt behind you of how IT was built without security in mind. So it's a challenging space, and we're trying to put as much clarity as we can.
And that's what I think I'm always proud about with Microsoft and security is we don't just build the products and get more products out there, which is an approach you see quite a lot of in trying to just sell more stuff, but actually our contribution to things like the Open Group, which I know you're a part of. So do you want to talk a bit more about what you do there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and actually I want to touch on the Microsoft piece. Like the one thing I really like about being able to do this with Microsoft is we are very mission driven and about empowering every person on the planet to achieve more. And that's really how we think about the security piece. Is it's not so much we're trying to capture the cybersecurity market per se, which is something that we're by default doing. But we're actually trying to really enable organizations and bridge that sort of IT versus security gap and that business versus security gap. So that's one of the great things about being able to do that as Microsoft is really kind of fuse that together, and that's one of the things I love about my job. Don't let my boss see this because I might not get paid as much. But the Open Group perspective, this is the Open Group. I love working for it. I'm actually working with them. I'm actually the Zero Trust Architecture co-chair for the Zero Trust Architecture Working Group, and I get to work with folks that were part of the original Jericho Forum. And so the Jericho Forum was like the first formal opposition to the idea that perimeters are the only thing you need to do in security, network perimeters. And so they, this is, dated back all the way to the 90s, like when email and attachments, and technically in the 80s when they added to the protocol. But they were thinking about the limitations of this. This was some really senior CISOs at the time saying, this network perimeter thing doesn't work. It doesn't allow me to enable my business, right? So working with the Open Group is really awesome because you get to work. I've gotten to work with some of the folks that were around at that time, but also current experts and fresh thinking as well. So it's a great environment there. And we're actually released what is effectively the next generation of the Jericho commandments in terms of the core principles, probably about 6 months ago. And so that's really what this section is about, is sharing that Open Group perspective on that. And then how does it map to the original Jericho commandments? And what are the principles they're thinking? They kind of took a little bit of more of an expansive. Like Microsoft only has 3 zero trust principles. They have about 10 or 12, if I recall correctly. And so within the Open Group, we kind of able to flesh out the story from a different perspective, which has really been a treat.
Yeah, and I like the fact that more and more of the security industry is coming together because of the recent activity that's been happening. We're seeing a lot more people working together in security. It's not about, again, just selling products and services and competing. The bad guys who are competing against, that's really what we've got to do. So shifting that into then the continuous improvement side, another one of the great quotes that I love is, it's a little bit like Lord of the Rings and Gandalf comes running in about the ring. But this quote is actually, am I compliant? Am I secure? All right. So the difference there is we see more companies getting into compliance or having to do compliance because it's not their choice to. But compliance internally can be just governance, risk, and compliance as well as then that makes you secure. But just being compliant doesn't mean you're secure, right?
Yeah, and the thing here that we're finding that's been a really interesting insight is, compliance and security are trying to answer the same question, right? Are we secure? But now the compliant version of that had to be complete. It had to have people, process, technologies. It had to be very thorough, very detailed, very complete, which takes months, which means you can only do it every so many years, right? So you can't be doing a complete compliance assessment all the time. It's just not going to work. You can't be that thorough. So that constraint on it really made you answer the question in a different way of, are we secure? Now, when you look at the security world, you've got to be able to patch, hopefully within days, single digit days, but you've got to answer that question differently. And so the cool thing is the cloud is helping these two disciplines, but forced apart disciplines, kind of separated at birth, a little bit closer together, because you can answer questions on a software-defined data center like the cloud with a query in a moment, right? What's my security configuration? Am I patched? do I have any of these issues? You can answer that very, very quickly. It's all software. And so we're actually starting to see compliance and security work closer together now, which has really been a great sort of benefit. So that's one of the exciting things that we've seen.
Very cool. Yeah, and it's nice to see the DevOps coming in here as well. DevSecOps is something surprising how many different areas of what needs to be secured kind of waits till the last minute before people realize, oh yeah, we should have secured that as well, right? It's the soft underbelly of where the attack is going to go.
Oh yeah, definitely check out the talk track video where we talk about the intro to the CAF Secure, because this really helps in a very simple way that even business people can understand what the heck security is without any of all the technical distracting gobbledygook.
Yeah, I have another quote, which was, the first major incident can be an emotional event where people lose their prior sense of invulnerability and safety.
Dude, I've talked to some people who literally had to leave the room when they saw it was their admin account that was used during the incident because they felt sick to their stomach because they had to go get some fresh air. The first incident is absolutely the hardest, and we wanted to be absolutely respectful of that, and then guide people to, okay, here's a calmer, better way of doing things, because emotions are not the best way to make a decision. But yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on to the CAF. Now, the cloud adoption framework has been around for a while, but the main difference here is that we've pulled out security as its own subsection, right? So yeah, let's go through some of the CAF Secure part.
Absolutely. So the way we structured the CAF Secure methodology, and the methodology itself is brand new. We've had some roles information, we've had some strategy, prioritization stuff that's been sort of woven throughout the CAF. But what we did for the security piece is we have a top half there, which is how does security interact with the business at large, around risk insights and aligning with the business priorities, the risk management framework, et cetera. The security integration piece, how do you do that same thing deeper? And the business resilience, which is really the North Star of what you're trying to achieve with security, which is to keep the business up and running and not losing stuff. And sort of how do you think about that and bouncing back quickly? And then we go through, and this is where some of the work with the Open Group really came back, where we looked at the security disciplines. Of course, we looked at NIST cybersecurity framework first, and we still mapped to it very closely. But when you look at how do I organize my program and my outcomes and objectives, it actually was more conducive to some of the work we did with Zero Trust components in the Open Group. So we aligned to that with access control, SecOps, asset protection, governance, and innovation security, so that DevSecOps gets its own kind of full focus there.
Cool. And my very last quote that I love as well, which is, you don't want to work out your communications plan with the exec team during an incident, right?
No, you don't.
That's done long before, because if you're trying to work out who needs to know what information, where and when, and you're the one running around like a headless chicken, you've just made your incident worse, right? So, and I think that's the problem with this, is there is a lot of guidance, just in reflection of everything we've just covered in 15, 20 minutes. There is a lot in there, but I encourage every partner to go through the videos that walk you through with the experts talking about it in much more depth. You can get hold of this information and use it in your day-to-day conversations with your customers. And if you have any feedback for us, come to myself, come to Mark, or come to me, and I'll feed it back to Mark, because he's a busy guy too. And we'd love to hear your feedback on what else is missing, what haven't we thought of, what isn't in there. But I think there's enough on there to start chewing on straight away, right?
Absolutely. And I just want to take a moment to thank all the partners out there that are doing good work and really helping our customers be successful. That's helping make the world a safer place and keeping all of us safe in this era of crazy threats.
Excellent. Mark, thank you for your time. Pleasure to talk to you. And thank you for your great work.
Thank you.